Hey guys, Dan Bertacchini here. We're going to cover modern day precision rifle cartridges and rifle setups, how they apply to, current competitions like the PRS, NRL Hunter, other long range precision competitions. Also how they apply to hunting, duty use, recreational use, the full gamut. We're going to run through it in 3 different episodes, let you guys know what the most up-to-date current setup is and the best way to hit a target as consistently as possible. In this first episode, we're going to cover the basics of precision long-range cartridges, precision rifle setups, how they apply to basically being more consistent downrange and on target. In later episodes, we're going to go into more detail and in depth about each one of those. But right now, we just want to cover the kind of the basics with this episode. Coming from a shooter that's, with boots on the ground and day in and day out, applying these current rifle setups, these current cartridges. We want to separate you guys from kind of what you're hearing out there, what you're seeing out there, the knowledge that might be true, that might not be true, to what people that are in this industry, people that are in this space are actually using and being successful with. In long range shooting, the ultimate goal and probably the most important thing that you'll always run into is consistency. Long range shooting is all about consistency. You don't necessarily have to have the most aerodynamic bullet, the most accurate rifle. We all want that, but consistency and the rifle and the cartridge and everything doing the same thing time after time or as close to doing the same thing is what's going to be the absolute most important thing. You could have the most efficient or the most aerodynamic bullet out there, but if it's not doing the same thing every single shot downrange, it's not going to be the best option. This is with 15, 20 years of trial and error, of basically figuring out the hard way and, figuring out what works and what wins matches, what wins hunts, and, what wins wars, essentially. A great piece of data source is Precision Rifle Blog. The guy really puts together the data of what people were using and what people are using now and what people are using every single year and how that's trending. The most popular caliber and cartridge right now in the PRS is going to be the 6-dasher. It just does a lot of things very, very well. 10 years ago, we used to have to fire form 6BR brass into dasher brass, and it was kind of a pain. Now, with companies like Alpha and several others, you can buy just off-the-shelf brass that you don't have to fire form. And this applies to several other cartridges that are available now. But really, if you were going to get into the long-range shooting game and you wanted to compete or shoot for fun or anything, and you had the ability to reload, the dasher is tough to beat. It just does everything very, very well. With the dasher, there are also several other great options, and that's what makes, right now such a good time. And as far as precision long range shooting goes, you don't just have one option, and it's not even one diameter of bullet. You have, everything from a 22 cal, a 243 cal or a 6mm, a 25 cal, a 6.5, a 7, a 30 cal. So you have a lot of options, which is great because if you run out of components or if one component area goes dry, you can always pivot to go to another option. So we have the dasher, we have the 6BR, which is just going to be a little bit less capacity. You can run the same bullets just a little bit slower. Moving up from there, you have a 647. You have the 6GT. I still have a 6GT, and it's another really, really good option. Then you have the 6 Creed, and then there's other variants in that from the 6mm. The next size up in diameter, now we're running, 25 cals. And I'd say in the last several years, the 25 cals really taken off. You get the balance of both. You have the less recoil of the 6mm, where you have the more ballistic efficiency, heavier bullet of a 6.5, and it kind of meets in the middle. There's no perfect caliber or cartridge, and I just definitely will always mention that. They all kind of do one thing a little bit better than the others, but the 25 is a good option for a good balance. So you have 25 GT, 25 47, 25 Creed. The 25 Creed's starting to be really, really popular for the NRL Hunter series. People are running them in PRS. You'll see a lot more 25-47 and 25 GTs and PRS. And then from there, you have the tried and true 6.5 caliber or 264. So, you can go 6.5 GT, but most guys are going 6.5 47. I still have one of those. I've been running a 6.5 47 for, 12 plus years. One of the greatest, most consistent cartridges of all time. The 6.5 Creed, run that. I still love the 6.5 Creed. With current brass options, the 6.5 Creed and the 6.5 47 are very, very close together. The only difference is going to be a little bit more capacity with the 6.5 Creed and a little bit less barrel life, but you can get a little bit more speed out of it if you want. Some guys still run a 260, and then you can go up into the 6.5 PRC and other cartridges for hunting. From there, like I said, you have 7mm options, you have 30 cal options, but for the most part, I would say the most popular cartridges that guys are using for a precision long range rifle, as it applies to PRS or PRS-like events, are going to be the 6 Dasher, 6 GT, 25 GT, 25 47, 25 Creed, and then 6.5 Creed, 6.5 47. Those are all going to be the most popular calibers. And choosing any single one of those, you're not going to go wrong. You can win any single match with every single one of those calibers. What you see in front of me is my 6 Dasher. This is actually a production or factory rifle for the PRS made by Mountain Forged. I know what it's going to do day in and day out. And with the modern bullet technology and modern brass technology and rifle setup, it's even more effective than it was, 10 years ago. And this is the rifle setup that I'm going to take to the 2025 PRS finale. Another cartridge that I've been running this year would be the 25 GT, and that's another excellent option. And I still run like a 6.5 Creed, and I still have a 6.5 47 that I run for PRS as well. The 6.5 is great when you have a wide range of direction of fire. Some of these field type matches where we're not at a square range, we could be firing in a 360-degree span, so you could have every different angle of wind. Ultimate ballistic and ballistic efficiency is almost more paramount than complete recoil control. Now, I'm not saying the Dasher can't win that match, but I'm just saying that the 6.5, you're going to be more consistent on target. The wind might be similar, but the wind consistency is going to help you out in the long run. And also the elevation consistency, with thermal updrafts and wind updrafts, depending on how it's intersecting and how the wind's hitting hillsides in front of you or at the target. We've noticed that the heavier 6.5 bullets aren't affected as much as the lighter bullets. So I still will run a 6.5, for certain matches or maybe all matches. It's always good to have one as an option. Not every one of these calibers is going to do everything better than each one. They all have their purpose, and they're all tools essentially. So sometimes you just have a better fit for that job. And like I said, having multiple tools in your bag is going to be helpful in the long run. Cartridge options or caliber options, if you don't want to reload or have the ability to reload and you just want to shoot factory ammo, there are several companies out there now that make, semi-custom or fully custom ammunition that covers all of these calibers. So you could buy that as an option if you didn't want to go down to the store and grab some off the shelf options. Yeah, so 6mm, the 6 ARC, 6 GT, even the 6 Creed, all great factory options with a lot of off-the-shelf ammunition. The 25 Creed has, factory ammunition now, and then 6.5 Creed is going to be the one to go to for your 6.5 variables. So any one of those, like I said, those are still all amazing calibers that you can buy, and you can start with factory ammunition and then transition to reloading at some point, or just continue shooting factory ammunition for them. The unique thing about precision rifle shooting and long range rifle shooting is you can do everything perfect at the rifle and still miss a target downrange. And that is very unique to this type of shooting. It can happen in archery too, but especially for long range shooting, Like I said, you can be perfect and do everything perfectly and still miss a target downrange because of environmentals. Because at the end of the day, you're competing against the environment more so than anything else. So that's why being consistent and doing and having consistent setup, having a consistent scope, rifle, ammunition, everything, and consistent fundamentals and solid fundamentals, you did everything that you wanted to, because if you did miss, making that correction off of, oh, was that me or was that something else? You don't want that to be an unknown, essentially. You want to know that you did everything you could to put yourself in the best position to hit that target down range, because it's not if, but it's when you miss, you want to make that correction. And even if you did hit the target, you want to be in a position, and the best position possible, to either see that bullet hitting that target in a certain place, or to be able to recover fast enough to see where that impact went. Because hitting the edge of a target, yeah, it's great and it still counts as an impact, but we want to try to center up on that target as much as we can, because that gives us the most amount of room for error. All right, so now that we've covered cartridges, let's just cover some basics. Starting off with the optic, this is one of, if not the most important aspects of it. You know, not just the clarity and contrast and you know, the vision that you're seeing downrange, to the reticle, you know, and how it suits your eye, but also the consistency of the optic is paramount as well. If your scope is not tracking, we're talking about very minute, finite, you know, movements, and it's got to do the same thing every single time. So optical, you know, consistency and optical clarity are very important. I run Leupold because I know what it does day in and day out. Another important part of the equation is how you're mounting that optic. So whether you're using a one-piece mount, two-piece rings, whatever you're choosing, that mount needs to be as consistent as the optic and as solid, because we're moving things around. We don't need things to shift. Being able to mount certain things onto the scope or the mount itself is also important, you know, for competition, whether that be an electronic level, a mechanical level, a timer, all very important aspects. Barrel manufacturers these days are very, very good, and they've come a long ways. So really the barrel, you know, accuracy and consistency aspect is not, you know, as big of a factor as it used to be. There's so many good options out there. I like, you know, custom rifle barrels, but like I said, I could run one of, you know, 20 options. The action is another very important piece of the puzzle. Being consistent, having consistent lug contact, you know, a smooth functioning action that works time in and time out and through. When it gets dirty, whether it's clean, you know, whether there's gunk in it, it needs to function every single time and be consistent and reliable through thousands of shots. The trigger, I've seen, and I've had multiple triggers go down. I've seen some matches where it's very dusty and dirty and sandy or rocky, and I've seen 20, 30, 40 triggers go down during that match. Having one that's consistent but also reliable and functions in a lot of different conditions is also very important. Having a good muzzle brake or a good suppressor, they're making suppressors with very efficient muzzle brakes nowadays. Like I said, that muzzle brake is not just for recoil management, but it's recoil management to keep your reticle on target through the recoil impulse. So it's driving the rifle down and staying on target. Having some, either a chassis or a stock setup where you can manipulate weights, essentially put more weights forward to help you with the recoil management and help you with sight picture management. A good consistent bipod. I love the SkyPod because I can run it in multiple different places, from a square range to a field type match. And there's different options with that, but there's a lot of other really good, great bipod options. Some kind of a support bag, which can also be a rear bag, is very important, whether you're using it as a rear bag or you're shooting off of it. A tripod, both for shooting, for rear support, and for your optics. The Garmin is a great chronograph. This thing really changed the game when it came out, but knowing, you know, your velocity day in and day out, and even you can use that, and we do this throughout the match. If we're unsure if something's sped up or slowed down during a match, we can check it with the Garmin now live. Having some kind of a ballistic calculator, I use a Kestrel with applied ballistics. There's a lot of good phone apps out there, but you know, putting this all together and not knowing what we have to dial to for distance is almost useless. Good, reliable magazine is key, but those are essentially the basics of what we're using now to be consistent downrange. All right, now that we've introduced all these concepts and all this gear, tune into the next episode where we do more of a deep dive.